The following program contains adult language, poor taste in jokes, racial slurs, political slurs, slants, and all sorts of things that if you are sensitive and have a delicate constitution, you should probably go watch Teletubbies. You were warned.
Hey kids, welcome back to Roto Talk.
Alright kids, we are back. So, final assembly of this thing. This is going to be the last build video of this boat. Now, we still need to tear everything out of this thing, do a fine sand on it, then I'm going to seal it. Hopefully I can seal it tonight or tomorrow morning before the holidays, because family and I are doing the family thing. So, for a couple days. So we're just going to pretend she's painted, whatever. We'll go through that stuff in later videos, but this is probably the last build video, okay? So where we left off last night, I sealed in with our silicone this radio box. Now see that? It's not going, it doesn't even move. I mean, it's perfect. And I also wired in the switch and got all that stuff in. So what we're going to start off with first, doesn't really matter where you start. So you could, you know, this is a general assembly. So we're going to set our throttle, set our steering, put in all our cooling lines, put on our exhaust, put in our engine. Doesn't take that long. I'll try to make this quick. So here's our engine. Got our coil on there, carburetor on there. I usually would put a velocity stack on a cracker. A velocity stack's one of those little black dudes that it kind of comes out and flares. I've talked about it in other videos. You don't need to do that, but it does kind of help keep the water out sometimes. I might put one on later. We'll see. It's usually okay without it. So what we're going to do, now this is the GZ30 engine. This is not a stock Zenoa 30. It's got a little bit more oomph, not a hell of a lot. Gizmo motors. In the, I just uploaded a video that had links to all the parts that I'm using on this, almost all of them from ZIPPKITS. But there's a link in there, you know, for the pulley. Explore the ZIPPKITS website and the Gizmo motors. Lots of valuable stuff. That's why I didn't put each individual part link, because I want you guys to look at those websites and really get used to them. Because if you're serious about boats, you're going to be in there all the time. Now the engine I put on in the description was a stock Zenoa 30 cc with carb options. This is the GZ30. They say it's better. I don't believe it is.
She's blown up. Someone must have touched off the magazine.
But either way, so first thing I'm going to do with this, we've got our engine brackets on. I showed you how to do that in the previous video. We have our belt start pulley here. And then we're going to put on the exhaust. So you're going to need an exhaust flange. I'm sorry, an exhaust gasket. One of these. Okay, I've got zillions of them. There's already one on this engine that's hardly used. It's not even discolored, so I'm just going to leave it. And then we're going to put on our mount for our exhaust pipe. This is the Pro version from ZIPPKITS. So this bolts on the engine this way, and the pipe bolts on this way. I like these much better than the ones that go all of them through there. It's just much easier to put on. Now, what you can do, a couple different schools of thought on this. With these bolts that hold it to the engine, you can put some lock washers in there. Actually, I think that kit comes with them. Get that off camera there, okay? And then we're just going cooling bits forward. All right. And then we're going to torque them down. You can use red Loctite on this if you wanted to. Red Loctite is okay to use in a high heat application. Next thing we're going to do is, this is the exhaust off the old Nintendo that bit the dust. There we have to put in these O-rings, and these are seals so the pipe can pivot. It also helps with anti-vibration. So there's already one on the back of this pipe, so you put it on the header first, there's a header that slides in. Hang on, let me grab one. Just so you guys get the full extent here. This is your header. Now this is for a hydroplane, and it's very, very short, obviously. So what you're going to do, the header then bolts into the pipe, okay, with this clamp. Pretty straightforward. Now what you do first, before you do that, is you take your header, this is usually about that long, and then you slide one of these O-rings on it, like that. Then you're going to slide your bracket latch on there, whole side out, see that? Like that, and gently push it in. Then you're going to put another one on there, like that, and that's going to go over this lip right here. I'll zoom in, okay? So, that's that. Very, very, very simple. Now this one, since I've got heat wrap on it, which looks like I need to redo, which I will later, because this is getting pulled all back apart. So this one's already got the washer or the gasket on there. I'm going to put in another one, or you can put it on this side. Just make sure it goes over neatly and doesn't pinch it. Now again, this boat isn't going in the water. I will go through and tighten all this stuff up. Even if you use one of these, doesn't fit. Seriously? I grabbed the wrong size screws.
Your wits are even duller than usual.
Shit the bed, see? Accidents happen. Oh, let me grab some more. Okay. These are metric, by the way. Now, that is my gripe. You know, I've worked for the Japanese robotics companies most of my life. In the last 6 or 7 years, I worked for the Germans. So, I was born and raised since the age of 19, pretty much on the metric system. I wish the hell America would get their heads out of their asses and go frickin' metric like we're supposed to. My biggest pet peeve, because this boat crap that we do, that we love to do, is all both, depending on what you get. Like right now, this is metric, but a lot of the ZIPKIT stuff and Gizmo stuff, or whoever stuff, offshore electronics, whoever you're using, a lot of their stuff's American. Speedmaster is all standard or Imperial. All the good stuff's metric. I'm sorry, guys. The Imperial system needs to be banned. But anyway, okay, I digress. So, we're going to go ahead, put this back on. And it's very hard to do in a camera, because normally I would hold this where I can see it, but that's okay. Done enough of these. We'll be alright. And then we're going to... Oh, see? Screwed it up. At least get it started. And then you can kind of wiggle it in there. Again, much easier if you can just move this thing around and see what the hell you're doing. Good enough. If it isn't right, it isn't right. I gotta take this whole thing apart anyway, so we'll sacrifice one. Okay. And if you're using one of these, what I call slow ass drill, or an SAD, SAD, slow ass drill, make sure you torque them down a little bit with a normal Allen. So that's good enough for the, you see I pinched it? Don't do that. That's okay, I don't care. So, we're going to slide this in. Now, first off, yeah, that's okay. We'll slide this in. I do not have the exhaust output, that aluminum, I don't have it screwed into the hull. You guys just have to pretend, because I'm too lazy to do it, because I got to take all this shit out today anyway. So. That. Make sure your pipe lines up with your hoe. Always got to line up with your hoe. Right. Give yourself some extra thread on these engine mounts. Make sure your washers are pushed towards the nuts. Okay. We're just going to, I'm not going to tighten it up. We're just going to do it like that. Now, our pipe is in. Engine's in. Wank, wank, wank. We'll pretend that's done. Now, the next thing we're going to do is anything you want. We can go ahead and finish threading in. Because these, believe it or not, I am going to leave in. Sorry about that. My buddy, one of my buddies in the chat group that we have, said that my one shelf I keep all my model engines on was too clean, like I was nerdy, but the shelf I use the most, see all this crap? Yeah, and check out that guy. That poor bee has been in here for a month and he's still kicking, and if I throw him outside he's going to die. So, well, whatever. We'll call him Earl. So, anyway, I'm going to replace this before I paint it and everything, because this is all gooey and gross. So, these are our water outlets, our water inlets, and there's our prop. So the next thing we're going to do, I will zoom in, is we need to put our little fiddle fart on here, which is for our rudder. And what did I do with it? There it is. So what I do, sometimes depending on the build, your rudder might be below and it'll be up here. Sometimes it'll be underneath and like that. So what I'm going to do, this one obviously goes underneath, okay? So what we do is we just slide this on the shaft. The 440 rod. Okay, that's it. Now there should be a small washer on the bottom, small washer on the top. Mine does not have that because, again, I'm pulling all this crap off. I'll do all the final touches later. So what we're going to do, we're going to leave this loose for now. I know my servo is fairly centered. So I'm going to cut this off, obviously. It does not need to be that long. So let me find my cutters. Man, I tell you what, I would lose my ass today. Where is everything? Need to clean, kids. All right, so we're just going to cut this off right about here. Easy peasy. Now sometimes what I'll do, so you want to leave enough that if you need to adjust it, you've got some gimme, and that's plenty of gimme, okay? You can put a little piece of heat shrink tubing over this to neaten it up, make it look pretty. It's not really a big deal. And then I'm just going to just give this a quick tighten up. Because I'm too lazy to find the Allen wrench. Okay. These things, guys, are worth their weight in gold. I have like 5 pair of these, or 5, whatever. These tiny little baby channel locks are awesome. Love them. All right, so the next thing we can do, pretend that we have all our our stuff fastened in the back, nuts and stuff, because we haven't done that yet. Now, what I will be doing before running in the water, see how tight that gap is? Right there, I will cut that flush, or close to flush. It does not need to be that tight up against the engine, but for right now, just to save time on this pig, we're going to not worry about that. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to put a fuel bag in. All right, this again is out of the old Nintendo. I think I already did a video on how to set these things up. This is our little pitot tube that goes into the bag, and this goes to the engine. Now, since this is a cracker, it's really easy to get to everything. I'm not putting a separate fill line in with a Y splitter. I'm just going to go straight to the engine. I got my little fuel clamp, and then when I want to fill it up, I'll just pull this off, fill it up, put it back in. It's easier than having extra tubing and all that crap. So let me grab a fuel bag, and we'll pop this on. Okay, this must have been the one I used in the video because I pulled this out of the drawer and it already had the tube in it. So we're just going to go ahead, get rid of this one. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cut this off because if you try to pull that, plus it's been zip stripped, it'll probably produce a hole very quickly in life. You do not want that. So we're going to put that on there. Take ourselves a little zippy strippy. Go to strip club, what do you look for? Zip. Where's Zip? Want to see Zip strip? That was bad. Alright, tighten that up. And then I will put a holder in the back. That I 3D print these little buckles that hold down my gas bags. But that is perfect. But you want it to be held back here. I hold my gas bags up like this in a cracker. just because I like my air to flow up. That way, if it's like this, your air can go into your engine easier, if there is any air in there, okay? So I do a little buckle, I glue it underneath there. ZIPPKITS and other folks have little magnet sets that'll stick in there, and you can use magnets, whatever you want. Okay, that's done. So next thing we're going to do is our water lines. So these are also the old lines out of the old Nintendo. Let me get those together and be right back. Alright, after about a 4-hour delay. Anyway, I know you guys have already seen this in a video once before, but if you ever want to clean this grimy crap off of your lines, again, squirt some WD-40 in a rag. I know this might seem trivial, but you'll thank me later. And just rub it down your water line, or your fuel line actually, and it will come out clean as a whistle. Okay, so before I forget, I want to do a shout out to one of my chat buddies. It's in our chat room, which we've been having a really good time with. It's working out really well. V1 over in Germany, which I work for a German company and go to Germany a couple times a year, so I have a certain affection for Germans, I guess. But anyway, a shout out to his daughter Kimberly, who has her own Proboat Rockstar. Here's a picture of it. How cool is that? Go Kim. Awesome. So anyway, there's that. So what we're going to do, we left off with lines. So we're going to, now notice these are all some fairly funky colored water lines. This is a Nintendo boat. It looked like a cartoon. Remember, it was white, had all the video game decals on it and funky colors, because everything about Mario Brothers and all that crap is fairly bright. Or profound. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take, let's see, is that going to be long enough? Of course it's not. Alright, I want a little bit of that in there. Let me grab some. Alright, here's a little bit of that. I don't know, I just kind of like making it crazy looking. So we're going to take this one to this extreme. So just measure it out, make sure, we're going to have plenty of flex in there. You don't want it too tight, but you don't want a ton of extra weight in there. And I think we'll do a blue one. Now what you can do is you could do something like that, which I do a lot of on the inside of the boats. But in this case, I think we're just going to go like that. Alright. Then take some long lines, obviously. This is going to take a lot of tubing because I put my outputs here, so I have to go to the engine and back, which isn't really the most efficient way to do it. I do it because I like them in the back and I can see my water, I can see my water coming out when I'm running. Normally, you would put them right here on the sides, but hell with it. I did not want to do it that way. So, let's see. Will that work? I'm trying not to cut new line. So we're going to put this on the bottom. Oh yeah. So you can route it any way you want. Shorter the better. Just so you don't have it all discombobulated and all over the place. So we can do that number there. Give yourself a little bit of extra. Just because, why not? Okay, so there's an into the head. Again, whenever you're doing cooling lines, always go from the low to the high. Input, output. Same with this. Input, output. Why? Alright, class, who can answer this? Why? Heat rises. You want water and all the hot stuff to go up through. It's going to rise. So the water, when it goes through that hot head, is going to flow better up than it does down. Make a sense? Make a sense. Okay. So here's some long lines. Now again, we're not sure if it's going to stay this way, but this is line I have laying around. And then we'll just do about the same thing. And I'll go over the, if you can't see this, I'm going to go over this and there. Now you can probably see it. Let's make sure that's there. Perfect. Okay. Now, you can shorten that up if you want to. Doesn't matter. Now, another thing I've seen a lot of guys do, I've done this before. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Depends on my mood. But what you can do is drill a little hole right here and a little hole right here. And then, and actually we are going to do that because we're going to have some long lines coming back. And we're going to zip strip through that hole to hold our lines. Okay, so now we need one going back. So we can use, and bring it back to whichever side you want. All right, so hook this one up to here. Now, if you're in a hard to reach place like this is, I'm having to reach under here. A good trick, another magic trick. I'm not even going to put it on because I got to take all this crap off anyway. Pretend it's there. Another trick that I do with these is spray a little bit of WD-40 on the inside of that tube or the outside of your, it's easier to do it on the tube, and then it'll slide right on real easy. Or get yourself some of these off Amazon. Just type in medical tools. You can buy like 10 of them for $5 or something. And those are really handy for getting those in there like that. So there's that. I might replace this so it's not green and green, make it, I don't know, something else. But we can just keep it conducive. So that one's coming out of the head. And this one is going to come out of here. Now, this is something I do sometimes, but I'm not going to on this one. I'll like wrap it and give it a twist. Gotta get that schmutz off there. Bugging me. Alright. Just like that. And then what I'm gonna do, hang on. These are handy as shit. These things are 90-degree drill bit, you know, doohickey. If you need to drill sideways, it makes life a lot easier. Or you can use your Dremel or whatever. It's just a 90 for a drill. $11 a day's hardware. Really cool. And then just, or Amazon, wherever. All right. I'm not going to put in the zip strips right now. I'm going to wait. And then, so we have a cooling line. Cooling line's going back here. We're going to cut that guy to length. I'm going to say just a tiny bit. So you can imagine if you put these water outputs where they're supposed to be in most boats. It doesn't have to be. It can be anywhere you want. If you put them on the sides here, you have much smaller tubes that go from here to here, here to here. It's pretty quick, but I like mine this way. So the hell with anybody that judges me. So that's that. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take off our little throttle doohickey. That's the official name for this, is a throttle doohickey. And then we're going to take that piece of tubing, which is, I believe, right here. Yep. So I told you this earlier in the build. One of the things I do is I will grease this rotary shaft, and then I will slide over a silicone tube, a water tube, just like that. Okay, what did I do? There it is. And then I put this back on. Now, we're going to start setting up, because we have the fuel tank in, we have our cooling lines in. Remember, we have a cover going over this. Hang on. Which I still need to put my popsicle stick under here and my two pieces out here. That's okay. Like that, and I still need to sand that. So that's what it's going to look like. Then, so we're ready to actually set up our throttle and our rudder. So
You'll learn a lot, no doubt.
I'm going to take my transmitter. In my case, it's a Radio Link 7. Oh, it's a 6 channel. Why did I think it was a 7? Doesn't matter. And I'm going to turn that on to my cracker box. It's called Lego. I use one channel on my, or one menu model. I'm sorry, model for each style of boat. So like the Lego, I know is my Lego crackers, my favorite cracker box. But all of my cracker boxes run off Lego. My one, hydro, it says like bullet for my silver hydro, but all of my hydros run off of that. It's do it any way you want. So I'm going to turn this on. Okay, and all right. So what we want to do is we want to take our trims and we want to zero them. Oops, sorry. Okay, throttle trim. Now, okay, so now we're going to take this guy And now that I know that's centered, put them on just like that. Easy peasy. Okay. Alright, so we're going to tighten this one up. We're going to loosen this one. Don't use thread lock. You might even want to use anti-seize because these will rust, these little screws. Doesn't have to be torqued the hell down. It really doesn't, okay? And you do not need to grind a flat spot on your throttle. Don't do that. You don't need to, okay? So if you go just like that, it will not work. Because here's the reason. One, since it's radial this way, there's less geometry, okay, for that servo. When you use the linkage and the bell crank going up, excuse me, a lot of throw because you're using a lot of geometry and leverage. These are just radial. So you're getting whatever the servo's putting out is what you're getting on the throttle. So you have to be a little bit tricky about this. So at 0, and you can see my throttle neck is all the way back, okay? Like meaning the engine would never start, would never run. The butterfly's completely closed, won't let any air in to make an air-fuel mixture. What I do at this point is I put my Allen wrench in. You want to try to keep this from not moving on this end. I'm going to zoom in here. Hopefully you can see it, but I'll review it. And then I bring my throttle down almost to about half. Depends on your servo. You might have to do this a couple times. Then I just lightly tighten it. If you're using a ball end, try not to use a ball end because they suck for this. That's not enough. So I'm going to go a little bit more because you got this. There's a certain feel to it. You'll get it once you do it. Okay, I'm going to go like there. Perfect. Okay. Now this is going to seem a little weird. All right. At 0, see where I'm at? Now watch. I'm going to go full throttle, and I'm going to go reverse. Now I'm going to richen that up a little bit, or give it a little bit more gas on my trim. See that? That's going to be probably a perfect idle. Now normally, guys and gals, you will have a screw here like you would on a weed eater or an RC car or chainsaw, you know, if it was that type of motor, but they're all the same in the sense of the screw. Chainsaws and weed eaters are not the same engines as these. Don't misunderstand me, but this part right here is, so usually there's a screw that this is your idle set screw that goes here, and that will keep the engine from dying. When you release the throttle, it'll let it idle. You adjust that so the idle's good. We don't use those screws in boats. Take it out, throw it in your magic drawer, okay? Because you will not be able to turn your boat off if there's an emergency or when you're bringing it in. What you do is you hit reverse, and it kills it. Okay? So for instance, I'm going to zoom in. Hopefully you can see this. I'm going to hold my throttle down. Full speed. That baby flying across water now, right? And I'm going to turn off my radio, and I'm still going to hold the trigger, and you should see that throttle go all the way as far as it'll go back. Okay, that's your fail-safe. So if your boat gets out of range, or your radio dies, or your battery dies in your radio box, it kills the engine and you go swimming. It's a lot better than going over with a bag and picking it up out of the rocks, trust me. I turn my radio back on, and then that throttle should go right back to idle. A little bit faster than idle. I don't like using that term. You ain't going to launch a boat at idle unless you have a clutch. In most cases, you need a little bit of high rev. You hear me in my videos, I fire up my boats and they're kind of revving high at first, which they always do until they get a little bit warm. But even when mine are warm, they rev a little bit high because I like mine to do that so I can just chuck it in the lake and go. Everybody's got their own thing, so whatever you want to do. But the other thing that you need to do with using these throttle direct drives, which I absolutely love, it's all I use on every single boat I own, every boat I build. If you called me and said, JJ, build a boat for me, okay, you're getting one of these. I'm not setting up a linkage. I hate them. Now, that's just me. So your radio has endpoint adjustment. EPA, endpoint adjustment. Go into there. This is how far your throw is for the servo. You can limit it. So for instance, I'm going to do it easier to show you on, oops, Easier to show you on the steering, so I'm going to limit this to 38. Kind of annoying to watch. I might speed this up. Okay. Now notice though my throttle is 120 and 120. Now going backwards, it doesn't need to be at 120. It can be at like 20 because it's only going like gink to kill it. But to go full speed, if you just leave that endpoint adjustment at 100 on your radio, you will never get full throttle. When you squeeze the trigger, you want that pig to go all the way down and touch that. If it's not going down and touching it, you're not getting full speed. Now, I'm going to show you what that endpoint adjustment does on the rudder. We'll zoom in again. We lowered them to 35 and 38. Still quite a bit. Remember what I told you? You're not going to need that a ton of whatever. So I'm going to change that. See, that's full right hand. Now this is full left. Okay, so what I do with this is I will hold it all the way to the right and increase it until it almost hits that turn fin. And the same thing with the left. I think the left is fine. It's not a big deal. Now, when you're doing hydroplanes, riggers, things like that, you want to limit that steering because like a gas rigger or a hydroplane, they turn a lot with a little throw. These do too. It depends how fast you're going. You'll find this out if you're a new boater. The faster you go, the less throw you need. The slower you go, the more throw you need. I like what I do. This is probably coming from being a kid with RC cars, I'm not sure. But what I do is I put Expo on mine. Okay, so I usually keep my rudders so they go the full extremity of the axis, meaning it'll go all the way this way, all the way this way. But what I do is I put my Expo on, which is kind of a saturation filter on your turning. So like if you turn the wheel half, it only moves the rudder like a tiny bit. Like a lot here, a little here. But then once you get the past the halfway point on your transmitter, then it goes full stroke. The reason I do that is when I'm bringing the boat in, or if I'm going slow and I have to go around a buoy, I need more throw. Okay, if I set my boat, whether it's a hydro or not, and if I set my boat up so it's only doing this shit, and I need to avoid rocks or whatever, then I don't have any throw. So if you slow down, it's going to turn even slower. So I want that ability, just like in an RC car. If you guys know RC cars and you use Expo, or on an airplane or whatever, I used to use it on planes. That's actually where it came from. You know, when you're doing your ailerons or whatever, or even your rudder, you want a nice, slow. You don't want that jerky, fast, huge amounts of aileron. Okay. If you're going fast, but if you're going slow, you might want them, right? You got more air coming over the wings. Same thing with the boat. You got more water going under the boat. You need less throw. So I use Expo. If you're nervous about that, or if you're running an electric boat, maybe you don't need that. But even my electrics I set up that way. You'll find your own groove, but that's how I do it. So right there, and I haven't set the Expo up on this. On crackers, I don't. I just drive a little bit crazier. Honestly, it's more fun. Same thing with skiffs. I set up Expo and hydros. Crackers, I just kind of, they're my crazy boats. So notice I have, I'm hitting. You guys hear that? Not a big deal. So I'm going to do, I'm going to go here, and I'll hold it. There. Yeah, it's still touching it, but it's not a big deal. The other thing you want to look at when you're setting these up, and make sure there's no stress on the servo, because like these servos have a hell of a lot of throw, the ones I use, and you can do it so much where you'll see your radio box move when you're really gouging it. And I'm not going to do that right now because I don't want to stress it. So what I do when I'm setting up my EPA endpoint adjustment, I will literally start both throttle and servo. Well, throttle, I know how much. You always go 120. Go full tilt with this style of system. Not with a bell crank, but with this style of system. You're not going to hurt it. It just whines. Like, I have even my negative going 120, and you can see it doesn't hurt anything because the spring this cable's a spring, kind of like a flex shaft, and just unwinds a little bit. Done. No big deal. But my rudder, what I'll do is I'll set it, my EPA, to like 20 and 20 or 25 and 25. That way it's only doing like this right out the gate. And then while it's on the bench, then I adjust it. I don't start at 100 because chance you could bend your rod, you could do all sorts of crazy stuff. So that's that. The next thing you want to do is set your tabs, your trim tabs, at 0. That's what I would do, especially if you're new to it. Back these screws out quite a bit, and what I do, I'll back these jack screws out. Remember in the beginning when I explained these, see that ledge? Back your screws out a lot. This is what I do, okay? All the way out, and I bend them up. Those are strong. Spring steel or something. All right. Then I bring these back down. Okay. See how they're higher than the bottom of the boat now? Like a lot. I tend to use Loctite on these. Blue Loctite, because I like them to stay put. And then you bring your jam screws down. Crank those down. Done. Start at 0. Don't use trim tabs unless you need to. It only adds drag. Now, you might have to use them to keep your boat running right. Like, you might have to put more down on the right and none on the left because of prop rotation, okay? Don't use them unless you have to, though, because you're just adding more drag in that water. My last cracker, the Nintendo you guys saw, you didn't get to see it run really well because I crashed it, but that boat ran, I didn't even have trim tabs on that one. It ran like a champ. Now, the V-Box, I always use trim tabs on. Just about every flat bottom A-box, flat cracker I've ever built, no trim tabs. That's just, I never needed them. The hull ran nice and dry, meaning it wasn't pushing into the water. It was running perfect. It wasn't flipping. All those videos you guys might have seen in that I did a little cracker video today with the parts for these. And I put some of the history of my crackers in there. The ones that are flat bottoms, there's only 2 in there, I think, that are V-boxes in that whole video. The rest are all flats. The black one, the Egyptian one, the Nintendo ones, this, that, whatever. None of those have trim tabs. So, whatever. And as for your turn fin, bring it basically all the way down, like that. Torque the hell out of that screw. Use Loctite. You want that straight down. Don't even mess with it unless you find something funky. And we'll do boat setup troubleshooting and things in the future, but I'm just giving you 0 settings basically for your ride for the bench. Now, your strut, now you can see how my strut's pitching way up. You can set that strut at 0, which would be straight out, no angle. Okay, so make sure that edge is flush. And as for height, it really depends on the prop you're using. Certain guys are going to say to you, oh, well, you set your strut height at this on a cracker and you're done. Well, for a starting point, maybe. But again, if you're using a really big-ass prop, it just depends on what you're doing. You might want more of it in the water, less of it in the water. Is it a high lifting prop? Is it a low lifting prop? Experiment is the best thing you can do. You'll find out if your prop's too high, you'll get this cavitation sound where it's like, you've probably seen it in my videos because I run my props pretty high, and you'll hear this, like, it sounds like it's really high revving for the first maybe 5 or 10 feet, and then all of a sudden it catches, and it's like, and it takes off. What boat did I just ran a boat not too long ago that did that. Was it my mono? It might have been. I can't remember, but you can hear it in the video, and a lot of experienced guys would hear that and they'd be like, oh, his prop's too high. Yeah, it is, but that's how I run it, because it's a wave basher, and that's how I set those up. But so you'll hear this cavitation, like a high rev and it digs, and high rev and it digs. Or if it's too low, it just never comes out of the water very well. Or there's all sorts of little nuances to that. Let's see, what else is there? So in the manual, Joe does have recommendations on setup tricks for this boat. I don't know them because I honestly don't know them. As for, if you also go on ZIPPKITS, if you're building a ZIPPKIT kit, can you say that? ZIPPKIT kit? He has setup tips on that web page. You go left-hand side all the way down, I think, or close to it. He's got setup tips or initial setups for all of his boats, as far as I know, like the Super Sport, the V-Box, the A-Box, the riggers, you know, all of them. So yeah, check that out. It's good information, especially for starting. Your situation might be different. I always run a positive angle on my strut on every cracker that's a flat bottom that I run. A pretty extreme angle too. But that might be because of the way I build it. I don't know, maybe I have too much weight in the nose or something, but it runs perfectly. But I have good 5 degrees of positive rake. Positive is when you're aiming the prop to the surface. Negative is when you're aiming it down to Davy Jones' locker, okay? But start at 0 and look at the recommendations in the book, in the manual, or online, or just email Joe at ZIPPKITS, hit the contact us and ask him a question. He'll be happy to help you out. And I think that is really it for this. Let me think, am I missing anything? Water lines, fuel bag, carburetor set, oh, shaft. Okay, so the shaft is very, very simple. Okay, what we're going to do, what I do with these is I'm not going to do it. I just don't want to get goo all over me right now, and I got to take this whole fucking thing apart anyway. So what I do with these is clean the shaft. If it's a brand new shaft, you don't have to. I did do a shaft video already, so to set these all up. But I squirt some grease in my hand, and I, you know, gotta say it, I grease the shaft, except for the very end, about that far of it, maybe that far of it. And if I do hit it, I take a rag and I wipe off the grease, I slide it up, bada bing, perfect. Alright, perfect, slid right in. Now, first you would put your belt on. Now, I have no room to put my belt in. I would have to take my engine out to get my belt in. I have to cut this down, which is okay. I always do that. Not a big deal. I'm going to cut that down, and the engine's loose. That's why you saw it move. I'll cut that down with a disc, and I'll take my rat tail file. I'll sand that out, get it degouged, and I'll slide your belt on first. Make sure your water lines are not in the way when you pull the starter up. So in this circumstance, I have the belt going with insides the tubing, and then boom, there you go. And then we got our pull start too, and that's it. So normally if the motor's bolted in, see that? Nice and smooth. That's exactly what you want. All right. But the reason I wipe it off the last inch of the shaft is because if you get a big wad of grease right here, as soon as you fire this engine up, it just sprays grease all over the inside of your boat, and it pisses me off. Then you have to clean everything, and it just looks like a bag of... Same thing with this. A lot of times, this is sticking out a bit far. I could probably trim this shaft down a little bit. It's not a big deal if you don't, really. But I usually wipe off the last 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch before I put it in as well. Because, same principle, if you got grease on the outside, it'll spray it all over your hardware in the back, and it makes for a bad day too. So, yeah, you know, do what you want. The other thing I did not mention is zip stripping these. Go for it. If you really want to, go for it. Doesn't matter. If you're using a good quality tubing like I get from Zip, look at that. Those aren't coming off. I'm pulling pretty hard. I'm probably putting 30 pounds of pressure, actually quite a bit of pressure on those, and they're not coming off. If you're using a real flexible, like stuff you get off Amazon maybe, kind of a general purpose silicone tubing, it might, and I've had it before where it's like this black stuff and it looked like nice tubing. It's really soft, and you could just pull it and it would just come right off. Watch this, I'm torquing that thing. You do not need to zip strip that. If it makes you feel better, whatever blows your skirt up, okay? Now these aren't as wide as these, the outer diameter. So yeah, go for it, zip strip them. Invest in one of these little zip strip tools. These are handy as hell because boats take a lot of zip strips. Get them off Amazon. Just type in zip strip tool. I don't know how much they are. They're not much though. And you just pull it and you hit that and it cuts the tail off. Done. It's great if you're doing boats. It saves a lot of time, and you're not worrying about getting shit tight all the time. And that is really about it, kids, for this. I can't think of any other setup issues for this. The bottom skeg, remember that metal thing that's right here below in the boat? Helps you, it's like a keel, sharpen that, but you do that before you put it in the boat if you can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip this whole boat down. I'm going to super fine sand it. I'm going to sand it with like probably 250 or 240 first, and then I'm going to sand it with like 600. Then I'm going to seal it, and I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to paint it. I'm not going to video that. It's just way too hard to do. So for this build, maybe I'll do a paint video this summer when I can do it right. But this is going to be when I can shoot it and be done. So I think that's it. What else is there? That's about it. So that completes the build series. Now again, I still need to put the tongue down here. Where the hell did it go? Here. Don't forget this crap. You got to put this tongue in here. Alright. And then there's two other little pieces. One that goes here, one that goes here, and it kind of locks in like this and goes down. A little popsicle stick. I don't know where the little ones are. They're probably over on my other workbench. So I got to do that yet. But other than that, you know, you guys can figure that out. It's not a big deal. I did not go over how to build a radio box on this one. I used my radio box. If anybody wants the STL files and wants to print this for themselves, I will give you the link to the battery I use, and the servos you already have the link to, I believe. This receiver box will hold about any receiver, just about. But the battery is pretty specific. Sizing wise, you're not sticking a lipo in there of any size. You have to use my batteries for that, and you can just print this. If you want that, let me know if there's a need for it. I'll pop it up on Thingiverse. One of my guys in the chat asked me for it today. I don't care, use it. If it helps you out, great. This is version 7, so I've done a few versions. It works really well. So that is about it. If there's any questions, let me know in the comments section, or maybe join our chat group that we have. We have a good time in that. Shout out to you guys. We have a lot of fun every day and night, so it's a good time. So until next time, kids, keep dry side up. Bye.
Love will tear us apart.